maybe you can switch off the screen sharing now.
I'll do that. I'll do that. I'll stop sharing and
we are already live on Facebook.
Okay, great. So can you see me now? Am I visible?
Yeah, would appreciate if you could switch off your screen sharing so that we all can see.
I have done that. I think stop share. Yes.
Yeah, now you have.
Hello, everybody. Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible. You're audible.
Sir, am I audible?
Yes, Harsha, I can hear you.
Okay, excellent. So, hello, everybody. Today we have with us a very senior veteran practitioner with 33 years of experience in senior management. He has led NTPC in India and abroad. Lately, he has been handling NTPC Learning Institutes and has been a winner of global awards ATD, Brandon Hall, ISTD, BML, Munjal for companies' learning institutions. Implemented e-learning programs. He has been a certified GRI sustainability reporting practitioner, a sustainability from GRI KPMG, GRI practitioner from CSE and IEMA UK, certified corporate governance trainer from IFC World Bank, and he has also been honored with Prime Minister's Award and been a gold medalist from MDI Gurgaon. Welcome on our show. We have Mr. Alok Tripathi ji. He has been handling NTPC Regional Learning and Development Head. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Harsha. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for this nice introduction, and thank you for giving this opportunity to speak to an august audience. Thank you, IICSR, and thank you, Harsha, in particular to you. It's really a great pleasure for me to be with you this evening, and I'll be sharing my perspective on what is sustainability, particularly in the context of Indian power sector, and I'll also cover what NTPC is doing in this respect. So a warm good evening to all of you, and I'll share my PPT for the moment, and we can then have towards the end we can have a little question answer also. So here I begin and just sharing my screen. Give me 1 moment.
Sure, sir. So we will appreciate if you, yeah, please share your PPT and then we'll have a Q&A round.
Yes, sure. Is my PPT visible now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. So thank you once again, and good evening, everybody. I'm A.K. Tripathi, and this is the agenda that we are going to cover today. We'll talk about the challenge that the sector faces, particularly the power sector in India. We'll also discuss where we stand as a country and where we stand as NTPC. We'll also discuss what we're doing in this context of sustainability and CSR. This is the agenda that we're going to cover, but let me begin with a very fundamental question. And I would like responses from some of you. So what is the purpose of an enterprise? What do you think is the purpose of an enterprise? Some quick answers in the chat box. Can I have some of the answers? Is the chat box enabled? Harsha, can you see? I want to know from you. Maybe
yes,
one
sir.
or two.
Yes, sir. Chat box.
So why we
chat box is enabled, sir.
So why we have an enterprise? What is the purpose of an enterprise? Why do we have companies or enterprises around? Any Any reactions, quick reactions from anyone?
Yeah, we got a reaction from DNR Foundation saying it's for profit.
For profit. Okay, great. What else? Some of them, some more participants. Come on, quickly. We don't have much time. We can't spend too much time on this question, but I just want to have a little bit of warming up. So your fastest fingers. Just type whatever. What is the purpose of enterprise? Why we set up companies or why we set up enterprises? What is the ultimate purpose? Why? What did they do? Any more
To
responses?
employ people.
No? I would request you to type something, whatever comes to your mind. One is profit. What else? No other motive other than profit? I'm going to pause here if you're not typing. I won't proceed. At least one or two more responses.
Sir, many people have already typed. Are you
Okay.
able to?
Just
Okay.
quickly, can you read some of the responses? Can you read, Harsha, some of the responses? Because I can't see the
Yeah,
responses
for
here.
profit. Yeah. For profit, then no problem. From DNR Foundation, it came as for profit. From Akshay Agarwal, to meet certain aim. From because I don't know the name. Galaxy M31 with development. I typed employment from Kundan India GTP improvement. Then I said
So there are a couple of
sustainability.
responses. So improvement, profit, meeting certain aims. What I'm going to share with you, these are some of the questions that I had, and probably, for example, you say in this question mark, maybe profit or maybe employment or improvement. I'm going to give you a very different perspective, and this is something which I heard from very great thought leader, the Dalai Lama, and I attended one of his discourses where he says that the world today does not need more successful people, world needs more happy people. And this is the foundation of our discussion today. So how do you define success of an enterprise? Is an enterprise made only for profit? What does the profit do? What is the meaning of a success if we cannot bring happiness? So I'm going to argue that the purpose of an enterprise is beyond profit. And ultimately, we need to create happiness in people, in societies where we operate, in employees, the persons who are engaged, the business partners. So this is the basis on which our talk will be developed today. And here is another great thought from another great thought leader, that the world has enough for everyone's need, but does not have enough for everyone's greed. So this is another very powerful thought. Look at it. So on one hand, we are talking about success, and we are trying to redefine what success is. And we are trying to say that the ultimate aim is happiness, and we are also trying to look at a company's or a person's purpose. If it is only profit, then it falls in the category of greed. You can't only have profit. You also have to fulfill needs of people. So that is where the concept of sustainability and CSR takes place. And in the power sector, we see from a perspective of delivering happiness. We have to deliver happiness to the homes. So this is our outlook. We want to do home delivery of happiness. But what is the major challenge with us? The major challenge is, on one hand, we have to set up large power stations where there are complexities of emission, there are complexities of byproducts, ash, greenhouse gases, a lot of land has to go. Even if you are setting up a hydropower plant, a huge area gets submerged. Even for the and on the other hand, we need to have light, we need to have proper sanitation, we need to have a certain standard of life for our people. So sometimes the demands are contrary. On one hand, There are people who have darkness in their lives, who can't read in proper light. There are women who don't have any access to electricity, any kind of I would say necessities of life are not there in their houses. They're living a dark life. So this is one hand of the balance. We have to lighten their lives. We have to bring smiles on their faces. They should also know what a refrigerator is. They should also know what light looks like. There are people who die in villages in their homes because there are snake bites they can't see in their houses. So on one hand, we have to light those houses. On the other hand, we have to actually see what kind of pollution that we are creating, and that is what is the challenge. So as a power sector, what do we do? What can we do? Number one, we have to provide power to everybody. Power should be accessible to all. सबके पास power पहुंचना चाहिए. So that there is equity in development. So it's inclusive growth. We can't have beautiful, luxurious, multi-storied buildings in big cities, and there are people in villages who have no electricity, who have not known any of those luxuries or pleasures of necessities of life. So we have to make power accessible to all, and we have to provide reliable power. Reliable power means 24/7, and with proper voltage and with proper frequency. Third is affordable. The power should be affordable to people. They should be able to afford it. And finally, it has to be eco-friendly. That's the challenge. So we have to balance these two through these four things. Now, where do we stand? If you look at the world scenario, the first pie chart here on the left is the scenario in 2018, when the large block, 38% of electricity generation comes from coal. So coal has been predominant player on the world level. But the situation is now changing. Most of the states are now redefining their future strategies. And if you look at the stated policies of various countries in the world, we find that by 2040, the proportion of coal will shrink to 25%. And that is business as usual on the present already announced policies. And you can see renewables are the greener ones are getting bigger. So solar PV, wind, and other renewable quadrants are getting bigger. And the last pie chart here on the right side, it is the aggressive sustainable development policies. So most of the countries are also stating their aggressive plans. If you go by those aggressive plans, coal will be almost diminished. So coal-based thermal power stations will be only 4%, and oil will be almost finished, and there will be all those green and blue ones that you can see here. So that is where we are moving today. This is another depiction of the same thing. So from 2000 to 2040, what will be the different sources of power generation? So if you look from 2000, where solar PV, the orange line was almost on the bottom, it's taking a very steep rise, and solar PV becomes the number one, highest by 2040, followed by gas, and then followed by coal. This is a not not aggressive. This is stated policies. In aggressive scenario, you can expect coal to go further down, gas to go further down, and solar and wind and other renewables will be rising more steeply. This is the Indian scenario. As on 31st March 2020, we have coal-based generation, which is 54.2% of the total capacity, that is 1,98,000 megawatt. And then you can see lignite. Lignite is also actually coal-based, it's a different kind of coal. So coal plus lignite is about 2 lakh megawatt, 205,135, which 56% of our total installed capacity in India. And as you can see in the bottom, we have total grand total as 3,70,348 megawatt installed in this country. And renewable, which is the last but one row, is about 87,000 megawatt, and stands at 23%. We have made tremendous progress in terms of renewable energy. As you can see, renewable energy today forms 23%, which is not a mean achievement. But coal has remained a dominant player. As you can see, there are two bars here. The first bar is installed capacity and the second bar is generation. This is something which we should understand, that coal-based stations with 57% of installed capacity, coal and lignite, this is complete thermal, generate 75% of the electricity for the country. Why is it so? Because renewable energy, even if it is available in a particular capacity, say 1000 megawatt, it generates only during a certain period of the time. So a solar plant will only probably work during the day when the sun shines. So 1000 megawatts renewable through solar and 1000 megawatt of coal capacity are different, because 1000 of coal capacity will work 24 hours to generate electricity. That is why with a 57% of the installed capacity share, the coal produces 75% of the total energy produced. So there is a difference between installed capacity and actual energy produced, because the actual energy depends on how long the unit runs for producing electricity. Now, this is another important aspect. India has been perennially facing what we call as power deficit. Here we have presented data from 2015-16 to 2020-21. If you see 2019-20, which is in the blue ribbon, the requirement of energy was 1290247, whereas the availability was 1283690. That means we had a deficit of 6557 million units, which is 0.5% of the total requirement. So we were deficit by 0.5%. Similarly, during the peak hour, when the demand is high, generally in the evening, when all the shops and malls and cinema halls and other commercial establishments open, the evening peaks comes, and lighting load also comes from the entire country. That is where generally the peak comes. So during the peak time, we have, if you look at peak demand, it was 1,83,804, and we could produce only 1,82,533. So there was a peak demand shortage also. What I'm trying to say is, this country is already facing a shortage of power. So we have to feed this demand. Who will feed this demand? How are we going to compensate? How are we going to create power for this demand? Similarly, there is another aspect which I would like to draw your attention to. Look at the second paragraph here. India's per capita consumption of electricity is 1181 kilowatt hour, whereas the world average is 3130 kilowatt hour. So we are already from the world average, which includes all developed and underdeveloped and undeveloped countries. The world average is 3130 kilowatt hour per capita, and that to 2014 figures. I'm sure it would have increased by now. So we are about 1/3 of world average. So even by world average, we have to increase our per capita power consumption. That's another indicator of our demand. So how are we going to meet this demand? This is one projection that I want to share with you. If you look at 2017 March, the gray bar here is the basically coal plus lignite. Then we have gas plus diesel. Then we have hydro, and then we have nuclear, and then renewable energy. As you can see, in our case also, a similar thing is happening. Coal is getting slimmer, and the top renewable energy is actually increasing fast. In fact, presently the renewable energy is increasing faster than this, because the government has very aggressive plans for renewable energy. We have planned to set up 1,75,000 megawatt of renewable energy by 2022. So as you can see, we are also increasing our renewable portfolio and reducing coal, and we are also almost following the path that the world is following. Now, as you can see, the coal will still have a very strong presence. Coal is not going to diminish fully. So coal will have a very strong presence here. So to the tune of 40%, coal will still be producing by 2027. Now there is another kind of story here, which we should understand while we are talking about power sector. Look at this. This is the CO2 emission by different countries. In the left side, the table shows you the total CO2 emissions on gross basis. As a country, how much we produce? We are number 3 in the world. So we produce 2,467 uh, metric tons of CO2, which is about 6.8% of the global emissions. But if you look at the per capita, the second uh, chart on the right shows you the per capita emission. There we stand very low. All these years we have been giving this argument that India is very low in per capita CO2 emission, and that is why we should not be restricted much. But two things are happening. Number one, the world is not buying that argument. The world says that we are a connected world. If you are emitting more in gross terms, we are actually polluting the atmosphere, because ultimately the atmosphere is one. As you know, in India, suppose people burn parali in Punjab, people in Delhi get their eyes itching. So world is actually one. You cannot say that this is Punjab, I can do whatever I want, and you take care of Delhi. Similarly, the world globe is also interconnected. So world is not buying that argument, number one. Number two is, in ourselves, we have realized that this is not a very strong argument to take that we are very low at per capita, because our population is high, our per capita comes low. So that is why we always say that our per capita production of CO2 or greenhouse gases is low, and therefore restrictions should not be put on us. But no more. We have ourselves committed that yes, we recognize this and we will take efforts, and I'll show you how India has actually committed to the world body. Now, this is something which was eye-opener. There was a time when a lot of cities in China became so polluted that it was difficult for people to breathe. So a lot of companies came with innovative idea of sending, shipping fresh bottled oxygen. People used to order through e-commerce, and there were restaurants where they were selling fresh air. So this was an eye opener for the world, and world realized that we no longer can ignore this threat. In our country also, you know that we have the distinction of having 20 most polluted places in the world in India. Sorry, 15 cities are among the 20 most polluted places in the world. So this all led us to actually give our own commitment to the world body. And in December 2015, there was a Paris summit in which 196 countries participated, and India also participated with a lot of commitment and a lot of seriousness. And this is what we promised to the world body. These are the 8 commitments that we have given to the world body, UNFCCC. And these are called nationally determined contributions. So India has nationally determined its contribution to the world, and to contain the global temperatures, we'll do this. And I'll draw your attention to serial number 3, 4, and 5, which affects the power sector. So here we have committed as a country that we will reduce emission intensity of our GDP by 33 to 35% from 2030, by 2030 from 2005 level. So our emission intensity will be reduced by 35%, and we will achieve this by 2030. And our datum level, base level of emission will be taken as 2005. So whatever emission we were producing in 2005 per unit GDP of the country, we will reduce it by 35% when we reach 2030. So our CO2 emissions divided by the GDP of the country will be lower by 35% as compared to the total emissions which we emitted in 2005 divided by GDP of that year. Now, another one is to achieve 40% cumulative electric power installed capacity from non-fossil fuels. This is another commitment we have made. And the third commitment is we will create additional carbon sink of 2.5 to 3 billion tons of CO2 through additional forest cover. This is another thing which India has committed. This is our internal thing. We have created a very strong norms for emission for thermal power plants. I'm not going to go into detail of this, but this is very stringent norms by the world standards. So what we are doing in NTPC, to give you a very quick perspective of NTPC, NTPC is the largest power utility in the country, and we aim to reach 130 gigawatt by 2032, and we are a Maharatna company. We were conferred this status in May 2010. We are also ranked #2 as independent power producer in the 250 global energy company rankings. And the last one here is the latest one. The NTPC has been ranked first among Indian PSUs in Forbes World's Best Employer 2020. So we have now featured in World's Best Employers, and this is something which gives us a lot of pride. Now, what we are doing in NTPC, now in next 10 minutes, I'm going to explain you what we're doing in NTPC before we close for question and answers. So what we're doing is, number one, we are adopting supercritical technology, which improves efficiency. That means you burn less coal for producing this 1 unit of electricity. We are also investing heavily in pollution control equipment so that we meet all the latest and stringent norms of environment protection. We are also diversifying heavily into renewables. So we are no longer a thermal power company. We'll be increasingly investing in renewable power. We are also addressing many societal concerns, and I'll share with you some of them. And we are also leading in our CSR efforts. So this is a graph which shows you how we are adopting new technology. So earlier we used to have subcritical technology, whereas efficiency level of power plant was about 35%. So we have moved from subcritical to supercritical, then ultra supercritical and advanced ultra supercritical. And efficiency levels, as you can see, has increased from 35 to 50%. Advanced ultra supercritical is nearing about 50%. So you can see from 35 to 50, there is a 15% jump in efficiency levels. And the CO2 emission, you can see the inverted cone. As we go higher in efficiency, the CO2 emission actually reduces. We are also investing heavily on what we call as SOx control. SOx is nothing but oxides of sulfur which are emitted through our chimneys when we burn coal. Similarly, we are putting up equipment on a large scale for NOx control. NOx is oxides of nitrogen which emit from the chimney when we produce electricity. We are also going into what we call as air-cooled condensers to save water, because water is a very precious resource and a lot of water is consumed in condensers when we use a closed cycle, because we use cooling towers and a lot of water evaporates. We are also entering into an era of zero liquid discharge. So all the liquid inside the plant is treated, recycled and reused. This is the portfolio of NTPC which we are planning by 2032. As you can see, we will be 130 gigawatt company by 2032, and coal will be 65%. Gas will be 4.6%, hydro 3.8%, solar 23.2%, other renewable energy 1.5%, and nuclear 1.5%. So as you can see, hydro, solar, and other renewable energy will make about nearly 30% of our capacity by 2032. There are some of the things that we are doing to support the India's national government contribution. We are also addressing societal concerns. We are very aggressively doing ash utilization, because ash is a byproduct and disposal of ash is a menace that we are facing. So we are trying to utilize all the ash in different industries: cement, brick, land development, ash dike raising, road embankment, mine filling, so that we don't have to push this ash into ash dikes. We are also reducing our water footprint. As you can see, our water footprint is coming down. So we use less water for producing 1 unit of electricity. These are some of the other highlights, which I'm not going into much detail. I'll just give you the last leg of my presentation in 5 minutes. In financial year 19, we spent 285.46 crores. NTPC, in fact, has been a leader We are number one in PSUs in CSR spend, and we always exceed our 2% mandated limit. So for last 5 years, we have been exceeding this limit. So that's thing. We take pride in this, and we are number one among all PSUs in spend on CSR. So these are some of the CSR themes on which we are working: community health and sanitation, education, basic infrastructure development, capacity building, gender empowerment. These are the major 5 themes on which we are presently doing a lot of work under CSR. And this is our CSR organization. We have a board level committee, which is a mandatory committee. Then we have corporate CSR team, regional CSR group. All our stations have their own CSR cell. There is an NTPC foundation which does national level activities. And we have employee voluntary initiatives also, which we call as e-voice. So with this, I'm going to end my presentation now and I'm leaving you with this, again, a profound thought from a very ancient but very strong thought leader, Kautilya. He says that in the happiness of the subject means people. In the happiness of the subjects lies its happiness. He's talking about the king, ruler. So in the happiness of the subjects lies its happiness. In their welfare, whatever pleases the king, he shall not consider as good, but whatever pleases the subjects, he shall consider as good. So company always should look at people. What is good for people, we should do that. And that should be the aim of the leader, that should be the aim of the organization. Thank you very much. This was something which I wanted to share with you this evening. We are now open to maybe some questions. Maybe Harsha, would you like to?
Yes, it was a great presentation. It's wonderful to know about the NTPC's initiatives in the space of CSR, being one of the largest spenders in the public sector companies. You would also like to know a little bit more about you. From mechanical engineering to L&D in sustainability in the power industry, what has been the career transitions over the period of time?
Thank you, Harsha. When you join a company, you're in early ages, you're a young engineer, you put all your engineering skills. As you grow up and as you have different responsibilities, the boundaries actually starting. So when you have other responsibilities, you come out of the role of an engineer and you take up the role of maybe a strategist, or maybe looking at people around you, looking at the society. So this is how I have grown within the company. And another thing which happened with me particularly is I got an opportunity to go to Germany as a part of my training, and that was something which exposed me to the very strong ecological and environmental concerns that people in Germany have. Not only government, but even the people. So something which was so remarkable that it gave a lot of I would say insights to me, and I started probably getting more attached to works related to environment, sustainable development, and CSR. Then I developed myself in this field and slowly kind of migrated to this. This has been a very fulfilling journey, and I'm really I think as a personal level also, it gives you a lot of satisfaction if you do what we call as even personal social responsibility. So apart from company, we as an individuals also owe something to the society. So this is how I have grown to this role.
So NTPC is one of the largest spenders in public sector companies in the space of CSR, as earlier mentioned. So what are the project selection indicators? How do you all select? What are the indicators, and what are the success indicators also?
Harsha, first of all, we take the thematic areas which the government has actually decided. So these thematic areas become our guidance, and then internally we have our board sitting, which looks at what is required by people surrounding our projects and what are the topmost priorities for our people. And as I said, we selected 5 themes based on our internal assessment of needs around our projects, and those have been presented to our board, and then they decide what would be the uh, areas where we are going to give more emphasis in terms of CSR. And as you can see, women empowerment, that is gender empowerment, and then education, and capacity building, health and sanitation, and infrastructure development around our projects has been presently running 5 themes, which has been carefully thought out based on the needs of the communities surrounding our. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, but any success indicators or selection indicators apart from whatever the board decides? So what are the bases that they decide upon?
We do our survey. We do need survey in the surrounding areas by ourselves as well as through third parties. And the results of those surveys feed into these decisions. That's how, so those are the indicators of the needs. And then we also look at, since as you know, these days you cannot have one-off programs. All programs have to run on long-term program mode. So, for example, we are running a program called Girl Empowerment Mission. We have been very closely following up this mission, and all our major projects have done one very unique thing. We have selected 100 girls from our surrounding villages, and they are from class 6, so around age of I think 12, 13, and they have been selected from the village schools in association with the teachers, and they've come here for 2 months to our project. They live here in our executive hostels. We provide all the food, clothing, everything, all the reading material, and we give them very extensive training for 2 months. That is spread into 2 segments, and then these girls. We have been running this for 3 years now, and we have seen tremendous change in the, not only in the girls, in the families in which these girls go and return. And we also select 10 girls from this cohort for whom we bear entire cost for studies till their post-graduation. So first they come and study in our schools in our township, and then if they want to go to any other, maybe any other higher education institution, we sponsor them. So these are kind of programs that we are looking at a larger impact in society, and these are some of the programs that we're measuring also as our success factor, and there are I would say very encouraging success stories of these kind of programs.
Excellent, sir. It's truly commendable the work that you all are doing. What are the responsibilities of CSR and sustainability department, since it is separate in the most of the companies now, and where does SDG fall in your company?
See, the SDG basically looks into the environmental aspects of our business footprint. So, for example, if you are doing in projects related to environment management or waste management, or something which is related to emissions or environment, and that is in that area, if we are doing something, it is a SDG work, but the budget comes from CSR. A certain percentage of budget goes from CSR itself, but SDG takes up those projects. At the apex level, at the executive director levels, both these functions report to one executive director. But CSR takes those all other areas which we just described, for example, education, health and sanitation, and some of those girl empowerment or gender empowerment, etc. Whereas environment related efforts are handled by our SDG group. So on the apex level, they report to the same higher officer, but internally we have bifurcated them on these lines. But of course, the budget is given through CSR to SDG.
Okay, wonderful, sir. How much is the government involvement in CSR funds, state versus central, and how do you all balance it out?
See, we are a government of India enterprise, and the government is a very key stakeholder for us. And government is also a very key stakeholder for the society. So we work in harmony, and to the extent central government influence is to the extent of policy and guidance. For example, of course, the 2% mandate has come from the central government and through the law afterwards, through the act. And then they create the thematic areas. And generally, sometimes they also bring certain policies. For example, this time the central government said that let us spend on COVID-related efforts. So these kind of guidances come from central government. State government, since most of the projects are actually located in certain states and the local population is handled by, we work in very close coordination with the state government. And most of our projects under these themes are decided, of course, by our board, but within the themes, programs are decided in consultation with the district magistrate. So we always take guidance from the local district magistrate, and to that extent, we have a close coordination with the state governments. So these are kind of the different influences that we have from central and state government.
Wonderful, sir. So you are certified from international bodies like IEMA and CSE and IFC. Now, what are the courses? IICSR is a homegrown, dedicated institution for CSR and sustainability and building responsible leaders. So, what are the courses that we should introduce to be on par with the international best?
I think you're already doing very well, and some of the courses that probably, if you have not floated or maybe you have already floated, I'm not sure. For example, how do you do the need assessment? So, for example, if I want to do departmentally, if my people want to go, what is the kind of competence and what is the kind of framework or what is the kind of questionnaire that they should create and how they can do it? Generally, these are done by third parties, but suppose I want to also empower my people or our team so that they also can go, or maybe we can train some youth who can our own. Suppose we have executive trainees or good young engineers who can do this job. If you can train those people, float programs. So we can do probably this need analysis through by going to the villages around, meeting sarpanches and meeting people around and know what their needs are in objective and proper manner. That is one thing probably you can think of. The other is how do we measure what the question that you asked, how do we measure impact of our programs? What they call as social return on investment. Social return on investment. So how do you measure? Can we create competence in our people? How do you create baselining? How do you measure those? Plus, I think you have already recently floated a program that is also interesting. How do you communicate your efforts? What is the method? It should not also look like that you are beating your drum. How can you give the message subtly and with emphatically what you are doing for the society? People also ought to know. Investors ought to know. The press and media should know. People around should know what we are doing. So how do you communicate message? What are the methods? How can you use social media, or how can you use other platforms and other methods through which you communicate to people the efforts that you are doing so that they appreciate the efforts? You know, the problem with CSR is everybody knows that the company has to spend 2%. Now, sometimes people feel that it is obligatory on the part to do this and obligatory on the part to do this, even if the company is stretching hard and trying to help. It's not getting the kind of brand image and the mileage and the returns that it actually expects from such spends. So it is a challenge how to actually communicate the message that yes, we are doing this and we are doing this for the service of the society. So what kind of messages, how to design them, how to use social media, or probably how to actually go to the villages, maybe do whatever. I mean that has to be taught as a program or as a course. I think these are some of the areas which probably you can look at if you're not doing already. I'm sure you must be thinking on these lines already, but if you're not doing, probably you can include them in the portfolio.
I appreciate, sir. We would definitely be shortly introducing something on need assessment. On this note, I would like to open it up for panel discussion. May I request Dr. Upadhyay, who is also a lead trainer at IICSR and has trained a course on social SROI studies. So, Dr. Upadhyay, over to you.
Thank you, Harsha. Alok ji, you said that 57% comes from coal and coal will
Yes.
exhaust. What is future of non-coal energy in India? Because I understand Tamil Nadu, they produce about 23% from the wind.
Yes.
So
Yes.
what will happen in future in coming years? How we will get our power supply?
Sir, that is a big question. Actually, eventually you are right. Coal will have to be phased out, and we'll be left with 5 things. One is your gas, the nuclear, and hydro, then renewable, and within renewable there will be 2 major components which will be predominant: wind and solar. Presently, the biggest problem with these 2 are we have ample solar capacity potential in the country. Potential wise, there is no issue. Technology wise, there is no issue. Even the cost competitiveness is now coming almost at par with coal. So, for example, if you look at NTPC, our average cost of electricity through coal mostly is about, say, 3 rupees 10 paisa per unit. That's the average cost at which we produce. If you look at some of the latest tenders in solar, the solar per unit cost has gone below 3 these days. So solar has already become cost competitive. The only problem with which will become in this transition is solar is a time dependent generation. When the sun shines, solar will be there. Come evening, at this point of time when we are talking, solar can't support our lights.
Yes.
So it has to come from those thermal sources or maybe hydro. So there is something called storage technologies. So when we have sufficient light in the day, we can create power and store power in those technologies. Battery is one of the technology. Solar power can be stored in large scale batteries, and then during night those batteries will now give you power. Or there are other sources also for power storage. So if power storage comes in a big way and it becomes cheap, presently it is costly. Suppose you generate through solar and store in battery and then retrieve again in the night, probably you will end up paying somewhere around rupees 12 per unit.
Yes.
So that's the cost of generating through solar and putting in battery and retrieving. This cost has to come down. Suppose it comes down to at par with coal, say around 3 or 3.5 rupees per unit. Probably then we can have this transition. Many European countries are actually doing this transition already. So eventually we'll have to do that. Probably we'll also have to look at as a country on nuclear. So there is both sides of the story. So I think solar, wind, with nuclear and hydro can sustain our demand. But for the time being, at least for 10 years, coal will be in the active play.
Yes.
So we have a question from Mr. Narsingh Das. Would you please come forth and switch on your camera and mic, please?
Narsingh ji, you can ask your question.
Sir, CSR is a duty of company or responsibility for company?
See, earlier the CSR was a voluntary thing. CSR was not something not mandated by law. Companies used to do CSR. Sometimes they did not do anything and they created beautiful slogans, and they used to write beautiful brochures. and probably people were not actually doing CSR. So when you consistently neglect a certain aspect in aspirations of society, it comes in the form of a law. So it actually emerged as a law. Now companies are mandated by law to spend 2% of their PAT, profit after tax, on CSR activities. So it has now become a law, it is a compulsion, it is a duty. So you cannot escape this now. For a certain level of companies, this has become mandated by law. It's no longer a choice. If you're a company of a certain turnover and you meet those criteria, it has become a mandatory thing for you to do.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions?
No, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Narsingh. So I have one question. Now,
Yes.
you are in a power industry, and sustainability in power industry is quite an irony. Though you all are transitioning and you all still say that coal will be existent for the next 10 years, understanding the pollution level and the climate change, what are the innovations that you all are supporting in this space, and what are the initiatives that you all are taking to innovate so that you all do not have to depend on the natural resources which are available?
See, the coal has a special place in our present generation portfolio because we need a very large base load. As I already told, these renewables are presently in that time dependent phase. So you have them in the morning, and you have then by evening they diminish. So you like it or not, the coal has a very special role in our day-to-day life. Suppose imagine somebody is getting operated in a neurosurgery is happening in a hospital, and that person's life is so precious. And on the other hand, you say that you stop all coal plants. There is no electricity to do an operation on an operation theater table, or there is no electricity for a child who is studying in a remote village. So you have to always make a balance between these two things. You can only do a gradual shifting. You cannot make coal villain overnight. They have sustained our complete economy, and still with the economy actually needs it. What we can do is we can make this generation more eco-friendly. And that is where NTPC is doing a lot of things. As I discussed earlier, we are putting what we call as SOx control equipments in all our plants. We are making huge expenditure, even at the cost of making our power costlier. Will be arresting all the sulfur dioxide from the emissions. Will be arresting the nitrogen oxides from all our plants. And we are also going, all our new plants are, you can say, none of the plants are now subcritical technology. We are only going for supercritical. So all our new plants will be 800 megawatt size with supercritical, the highest kind of efficiency. That means you will burn less coal to generate 1 unit of electricity. So, and a lot of other research is also going on in our own, we call it Netra. We have our own setup of R&D, which we call as Netra. And there we are doing a lot of research on how to increase the efficiency of our existing power plants by even doing something between a hybrid of coal and solar power. So this is something we are trying to test in one of our power stations. So you have a solar plant which is helping a coal plant and is reducing the emission and other emission gases and other pollutants. So these are some of the researches which are going on. So number one, going into high technology. Number two, putting on a lot of pollution control equipments. And number three, migrating into renewables. These are the major decisions we have taken. We have also taken a decision not to put up any new greenfield thermal power plant. That means we will put thermal power plants only in places where we already have a power station and we already have a land acquired. So that is another thing that we have decided. So we'll be adding capacity, but only in the places where we do have acquired land already.
All right. Wonderful job. And may I request for a final message to all our viewers right now?
So thank you once again. It was a really wonderful evening. My final message is the message from which I started, that wherever you are, whatever you are doing in individual capacity or in a capacity of a corporate, try to bring happiness to the people around. This happiness you can bring by helping somebody in a small way. So maybe somebody is in difficulty, you call him up, cheer him up or cheer her up. There is a family who is struggling and you help the family by whatever means you have. You teach somebody. These are small beginnings that you can make in making a happy society. Try to feel others' sufferings and do whatever you can do in your capacity as an individual and also as a corporate. So, for example, if I'm living in a beautiful colony lit up by NTPC's power, and there are villages around which do not have power and which do not have good drinking water, that should bring pain in our hearts. So we are not bringing happiness in that case. So wherever you are in an individual capacity or as a corporate or as a startup or as a learning organization, do something which makes people happy. That's what I would like to.
Thank you so much, sir. May I request all the participants today to please switch on their camera so that we can go for a group picture with you. I know it's hard for us to get everyone in the same.
Those who can should switch on. Those
Yeah,
who are
yeah.
in a position to switch on can do that.
Yeah, it would be great to have a group picture with everyone. I believe many of them have joined from NTPC also. I should say that you have a huge fan following, sir.
Yes.
Can we get that picture, ma'am?
Yes, yes. Of course, I will be uploading it on Facebook and on LinkedIn. So please feel free to please follow us and we'll share it with you all.
Thank you very much. It was a lovely evening and I enjoyed my
Thank you so much, sir.
with all of you. And you can look at their website and their Facebook, IICSR. Thank you once again for giving this opportunity to me. Thank you, Harshaji. Thank you, DNR Foundation. And it was really a great evening for me. Thank you. We'll be in touch. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Dr. Upadhyay, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Dr. Upadhyay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.